Right, it's so very good to have you all here. This presentation, this workshop is called Taking the Back Seat. And I call it Taking the Back Seat because a lot of the times we design solutions to issues, to social issues that are not beneficiary centric. I found in my history of working this past decade that a lot of the programs we design for social issues for low-income communities. We sit in offices in Geneva or New York or some other exotic place and design these solutions and hope that we can create a one-size-fits-all sort of solution. So we're going to work around moving away from that and aiming towards a more beneficiary-centric solution to social issues. So I'd like to first tell you who I am, and I think my values describe me best. The things that I hold dear, are love, kindness, honesty, loyalty, and peace. And I think especially in the areas that we work in, these are very, very important attributes to have. These are very core things that make up our humanity that a lot of people overlook. And it's also easy to get sucked into overlooking these things with regards to how difficult the world can be, and with regards to how difficult innovating in low-income communities or just doing anything around innovation for people can be. So these are the things that I remember and I hold dear, and I recall whenever I'm going into a place that needs a solution. My first approaches to solving these issues were not the best. I remember the first time that I went into a refugee camp. So I work with refugees. I specialize on economic integration for them. And my first entry into a refugee camp, I went with this messianic attitude of coming to save refugees with my entrepreneurship programs from EPFL. It's a school in Switzerland. And I got there and I got to my class and I was very disappointed and embarrassed because I realized that my students were made up of PhD students. I had gone into the camps thinking that they needed saving, thinking that they did not have a formal education, thinking that what I was going to teach them without proper research was valuable to them, thinking that the key to integration was entrepreneurship, because something special about refugees in Ghana is that they have all the legal rights as Ghanaians do. They can live, work, marry, own property, and that sort of thing. And I thought that the reason they were not integrated were, one, because they didn't know the local language, they didn't know English, and two, because they didn't know entrepreneurship. Both these assumptions were wrong. And so we're first going to discuss how to ask the right questions, how to make sure that we're asking the right questions and not treating solutions to problems that don't actually exist. We need to recall that innovations and solutions are more about the beneficiaries or the communities that we're hoping to penetrate, and not about us. It's not about our ego. It's not about the things that we have inside. So I'd like we're going to go into a breakout room for 20 minutes. This part is called queststorming. It's like brainstorming, but it's with yourself and it's with your beneficiaries. So what this does is you make notes, you ask questions. We're going to ask 100 questions today. We'll have 20 minutes for this exercise. I know that a lot of you might be running your own projects or might be interested in starting to run your own projects. And there can be some assumptions that we know enough about the problem in order to go on and start solving it, or enough about the beneficiaries in order to go on and start impacting their lives. Oftentimes when you sit and take a breather, you'll realize that these assumptions are incorrect. There are a myriad of questions that we have not answered. There are a myriad of questions that we have not asked. And so we're going to take 20 minutes to ask questions. Now this is an example of the kinds of questions that we will be asking. You can group them into different categories like this, but this is an example of the kinds of questions that I would like you to go and ask about your communities, go and ask about the work that you're doing, go and ask about yourself. What knowledge do you have about the problem What resources have you got? What resources haven't you got? What stage are you, realistically speaking, practically speaking? Where exactly are you in your innovation journey? And what do you know about your community? What don't you know about your community? What needs to happen for something else to happen? What needs to stop happening in order for your innovation to be smooth? So let's take 20 minutes and try to come up with 100 questions. I know it sounds like a lot, and we may not reach the entire 100, but it's important that we push the envelope and we push ourselves in order to ensure that we are asking as many questions, as many pertinent questions as we can. And in this exercise, please note that there aren't any right or wrong answers. The crux of the exercise is to ensure that your mind is in a place, your innovative mind is in a place where you're able to look at a problem, look at an innovation, think of it, and ask all the questions that may arise with regards to it. So let's take 20 minutes and start this exercise. Feel free to group your questions into different categories, or depending on the way that your mind works, you can free flow as well and ask all the questions that pop into your head. And here are some examples to go with. Have you got any questions before we move on?
I have one question. How many breakout rooms will you need for this exercise so that I can create them?
Oh, lovely. So how many participants have we got? If we've got about 20, perhaps four per breakout room.
Okay, sounds great. Therefore, I'll create 5 and open them now.
Okay, great.
Hello, you should be able to join a breakout room. Let me know if you are unable to see the function.
Hi, Cody. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
So, there are like just one or two people in every breakout room. One I was in, there was just like the presenter was there.
Should I maybe close one breakout room? Would that work?
Yeah, and also, I mean, can the three of you move into the breakout rooms and try to facilitate the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. Can you make me the co-host, Cody?
A co-host? Yes.
Yep. Thank you so much.
I just moved the presenter to a different breakout room, but for some reason, okay, yeah, they just moved.
Yeah, yeah. That's great.
Welcome back, everyone. Were we able to get some useful questions? And did anyone actually reach 100?
Well, I think our group got a bit stuck in the introductions, talking, brainstorming rather than the actual getting questions. I think we got,
Right.
but not quite 100.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is certainly an exercise to continue after this. So there should be time for that later on. If everyone's back, and if anyone's got any questions, please let me know, or any comments, please let me know. Otherwise, we can move on to our next exercise. This one should be more productive, seeing as we've gone through the introductions already. All right, I'm going to start recording screen share and go into the next one. Oh, hang on, I see. So comment. All right, lovely. So the next thing we're going to treat is MISI. Now this sort of, it doesn't exactly go hand in hand with queststorming, but it's a very interesting way of categorizing our ideas and our questions and our thoughts. It helps us more easily think around subjects. I've been using MISI for a while now. If your mind is like mine, it tends to get into a bit of a jumble with all the information that's flying through it. And so MISI helps me organize. And so it stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And as the text says, it helps reduce complexity. It helps collate things without leaving any overlaps. And I'll show you a few examples, and then we can get into practicing to use MISI. So one really straightforward example is take a group. If we're trying to classify the population, for instance, the global population, we can do it by saying we're putting people above the age of 60 in one group and people below the age of 60 in the other group. So this means that there aren't any overlaps, and no one person from another group can be in the other group. So this helps us easily classify and categorize the population of the things that we're thinking about. Another example is this. Now we're going to do a small exercise before we go into our next breakout rooms, but I'd like you to take a look at this grocery list and read over the list and close your eyes and try to remember all the things that are on the list. Let's just take 30 seconds or so to do this, or half a minute to do this. So we've got eggs, bananas, lettuce, bread, fish, meat, cabbage, sausages, tomatoes, apples, bagels, and ice cream. Now, if I asked you to tell the list back to me without looking at it, I'm just going to change screen to make it more interesting. If I asked you now to remember the things on the list, would you be able to tell me everything that was on the list? Provided you don't have eidetic memory, of course. Now, usually the answer is no. We're not able to recount everything that's on these lists. And so with MISI, you would categorize the list into, or you'd segment the list into, you'd put meat, fish, ice cream, and sausages into frozen foods. So that's frozen foods. We would put lettuce, cabbages, and tomatoes into, well, and bananas into fruits and vegetables, and we put bread, bagels, and what's the last one? Eggs into baking items. And so that's how we would use MISI. MISI helps us dispel overlaps. MISI helps us categorize information and think about things more quickly. If I asked you to think of an elephant and think about an elephant using MISI, you would easily tell me which countries elephants are found in, or which continents they're found in, or what sizes they are. And it really, really helps in quickly on the go classifying and categorizing information. I'll email some links on MISI examples and MISI exercises with you after our workshop, just so you can practice this. It's very, very useful indeed, especially in the areas that I assume you're working in. So we're going to go into breakout rooms again. We're going to do 15 minutes this time. And I'd like you to, as an exercise, please write this down. I'd like you to think of means of transportation. And I'd like you to categorize all the possible means of transportation. And when we come back, we're going to discuss about them. So this is one exercise. I'm flipping to the next screen for the second one. I'd also like you to think of means of communication. Now, one group can do means of transportation and another can do means of communication. I'd like you also to think about all the different segments or categories that you can put this in. And I believe I have a last one. This is for later, but you can categorize the responses or questions that you got from your quest storming exercise in the last one. So again, one group, let's do means of communication, and the next group will do means of transport. If we're ready, let's go into the breakout rooms now. If you've got any questions also, please shoot.
Hi everyone, you should be able to join a breakout room. If you're unable to see it, I'm currently assigning a few people. But yeah, ask me if you have any questions or if you're unable to see the invite. And please, just a reminder to not use your full name in this meeting and only your first name, the initial of your last name, and the country of origin. So please rename yourselves.
Welcome back, everyone. How did the session go? I was in one of the breakout rooms for that was treating means of transportation. Does anyone want to share any feedback on means of communication? If you're able to categorize them into a MECE way of thinking. We have 12 minutes in the Q&A session. Anyone wants to share? Don't be shy. I'm really interested in hearing about, especially about the different categories of communication. In the one for transportation, what was prevailing was it started out with trying to list the different means of transportation first, such as helicopters and Hyperloop and such. But the MECE categories for means of transportation would be land, which deals with everything you can transport yourself with on land, be it rollerblades or a skateboard or a car or a bicycle. The next one was water, which also deals with everything that you can travel through with water. And the last one was air. And so these are MECE categorizations that ensure that you haven't left anything overlapping, including things that you don't know about or would not have thought to think of. So with regards to means of communication, the different categories of communication, the different MECE categories of communication would be verbal, non-verbal, visual and non-visual, and written rather. And so this helps us hone our thinking in. This helps us have a sit down and have a clear mind about all the different things that we might be dealing with. And so anytime that you hear about a topic, it can be any topic whatsoever, you only need to think about, in the primary phases, you only need to think about what the mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive versions of that idea are before you go into the nitty-gritty. And this is again where quest storming comes in handy, or this is where issue trees or decision trees come in handy. I'm going to share material. I believe I'll share material on this with you, and Mun Impact can disseminate them via email or other means of communication. So this is what, please go on.
Yeah, I just have like one small question. That while categorizing these elements, I mean, the ones you assigned us were like pretty easy to just disintegrate them into different categories. But when things are like very similar and there's a like very thin line of difference between them, then how would you suggest to like categorize them according to the MECE structure?
Okay, so MECE goes much deeper than just the primary categorizations. There are also issue trees or decision trees that helps you go deeper into listing the different categories. And so it fans out and really goes into the nitty-gritty of that. And I'm going to share material on that and how to do it. It's really this, like with a lot of other things, practice makes perfect. And you'll find that after some time and after some practice and applying it to even things in everyday life, such as a grocery list, you'll find that your mind is starting to tune to work towards MECE. And it just makes dealing with issues so much easier. So I'll share material on how to go deeper into MECE categories.
DRL, we have now entered the Q&A session for this workshop. If you have any questions, feel free to message them in the chat and I will read them out so that the presenter can answer them. We only have approximately 7 minutes, so please try to come up with questions quickly. And yeah, thank you. Okay, so our first question is, what is your biggest piece of advice for young activists and people who want to make a change?
Know the problem, like truly know and understand the problem, and not just from things that you read online or resources that you have in the news, but as much as you can, find persons within the problem and talk to them. I've found that the situation is always different from what is told on the news or written in articles. So truly know the problem in order to be able to have the most realistic or practical change or impact. Thank you very much for your question. You're welcome. I wanna elaborate on that. So in 2019, no, 2018 rather, I was running English as a second language for 3 refugee camps in Ghana and Portuguese as a second language for the Cidade de Deus favela in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And again, I thought that the language barrier and entrepreneurship was the reason for the lack of integration amongst refugees and migrants. And I run this for a while in Ghana, Brazil, and Kenya. I ran it for a while, and one morning I'm sitting in Nairobi and I get a phone call from one of my refugee beneficiaries, and he tells me, Ria, you know, we don't need your language courses, we just need money. And this was coming from a place of not really speaking to my beneficiaries and not really co-designing solutions with them and not really finding out what they needed and knowing and understanding the issue. And then I went into the camps and started quest storming and went into the different communities. And I found out that they really did only need money to jumpstart their businesses and restart their lives. And now refugee camps that we're present in are turning into microeconomies. And so this is why it's extremely crucial to know and understand your problem. In order to solve majority of problems, we need funds to develop them. What are some of the avenues we can use to get these funds? That's an extremely difficult one. That's the age-old question. And honest, I think first and foremost is getting some traction, showing that your solution works, being able to communicate why it's necessary, and then speaking to companies that have been funded for those similar sorts of things, because you'll find that donors and funders fund family members, so to speak. They usually only fund companies and organizations that they funded before. There's a network of communication around this. And so partnerships will help. You need to be able to depict why you're useful for them or show what sorts of innovation you have. But more importantly, you need traction. You need traction, you need testimonies from your beneficiaries. You need to really show that you are necessary and what you're doing is useful to your beneficiaries. It won't be easy. It may take years and years and years. It took us 7 years before we received our first round of funding, and then another 2 before the next round came in. And so sometimes it takes a while, but show traction and partner with companies that have already received this funding and really elucidate why you are necessary and why your solution works. My pleasure. Do you think that donating to an NGO is useful and will it really help those who need? Well, I mean, largely I've found that it isn't especially useful because there are many areas of corruption, and you'll find in many instances that the help doesn't actually reach the beneficiaries. I remember I spent 6 months, I spent 6 months in a certain refugee camp, I won't say which one, and in all those 6 months, there wasn't any show from organizations like the UNHCR, but in their reports, they wrote that they were there and they had distributed food and stipends and that sort of thing, but it never happened, and it hadn't happened for years, for about 7 years, to that time that I was there. And so it's very difficult to ensure that help is getting to the people who need it the most. It's also why we have taken a blockchain-backed approach to helping our beneficiary refugees, because it means that we're able to write smart contracts that allow the cash to reach the beneficiaries directly, ensuring that there aren't any means of corruption along the way, ensuring that the money doesn't get lost along the way. And yes, that's, if you can ensure that the money is reaching or the help is reaching beneficiaries directly, then yes. Otherwise, there are several means of corruption along the way. Human error, as it were.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. Unfortunately, we do not have any time for any more questions. Again, thank you so much for coming, and thank you to all of the attendees. I'm just going to share via chat now the presenters' social media. You may reach out to them if you have any questions, I'm assuming. And also I'm also going to share the Moon at Home message where you can sign up for Moon at Home, which is one of the programs for Moon Impact.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And also lastly, sorry, before you leave, will it be okay for us to take a screenshot of this meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
If that's okay with you, of course. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so anyone that wants to turn their cameras on, you have a second before I take the screenshot. Okay, I'm taking it now.
Okay.
And I'll take another one, so just a second.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're done. Thank you so much. Everyone, feel free to leave the meeting, and we hope to see you in future workshops.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Cody.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. You as well. Bye. Cody, get some sleep.
Yeah.